Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the All Words Are Free podcast. So, today is a little bit of a lighter one because I'm kind of in that kind of brighter mood. I thought we could talk about something a little bit more frivolous. Thought it would be nice. And so, today we're going to talk about the state of pop, as you have seen on the title of the video, of course, or the podcast episode. Um, I think this is really interesting. It's been inspired by a couple of things, but I think it's really interesting to kind of see the trends or even spot the trends in our current kind of mainstream music. The turnover of kind of like fast fashion, the turnover of what's in and out has drastically increased as time has gone on, and I think this is a really interesting thing to unpick. But otherwise, general overview before we dive into it. So currently writing my dissertation, which is fun. It's nice to see things coming together. And yeah, that's like the kind of big end to the university degree. And next steps from there, right? God knows. Well, no, I know, but I know aspirationally, but we'll see. We'll see what actually happens. But yeah, it's an exciting but kind of sad and scary time as well. And yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. So without further ado, let's get into it. So it hadn't struck me really until I watched Khadija Mbowe's live stream. A lot of our kind of biggest stars at the moment in the kind of mainstream pop realm are female. So we've got your Sabrina Carpenters, Olivia Rodrigo's, Chaperone. Our latest pop girlies are, well, just that. Another thing I've noticed about kind of breaking through to being these kind of really big names rather than being in the kind of pop slurry is how familiar fans are with the artists they like. So we don't say, for example, like Sabrina Carpenter or Chapel Roan, but we say Sabrina, Chapel, Taylor, Ariana. This speaks somewhat to their fame, of course, because people know like to whom we are referring when we say these names. But it does also speak to the kind of parasocial nature of fame in the advent of high consumption media. So not only do we like their music, but we follow their lifestyle, whether through social media or things like Google searches, right? And many artists now are actually stepping back from things like social media or posting on stories in real time. They're now posting in hindsight to maybe prevent being found or even followed, which is very worrying and not something that people should have to consider. So everyone is, of course, entitled to privacy, and yet we have come to a crossroads. So our big mainstays are women, right? So we've got our Taylor Swifts and our Ariana Grandes, people who, for those in my generation, we've grown up with, right? So something that these artists are gifted with, however, over the most recent pop stars, is perhaps a higher element or higher likelihood of longevity. So since they snuck in just before the biggest boom of the internet, these stars have not only adapted with the times, but were loved before the birth of things like short form content and killed attention spans. They worked in the long form age and have moved with and alongside the popularity of short form content. We've learned to love them before our minds got quick. And speaking of kind of these longevity people, I'd like to introduce what I novelly coined perhaps as the Taylor Swift effect. So even if you're not like the greatest Swift fan, if you're remotely on the internet or kind of intrigued in media, you likely know of her eras, right? Her latest tour was literally called the Eras Tour, playing into that kind of fan base erization of her music and how she's grown realistically. It's just somebody growing up and maturing, right? Going through different life experiences. But hey ho. There is a change, as I said, naturally in one's image over time, be it as one matures or experiences a life event, but the constant turnover required in today's media stream puts this process on hyperspeed, just like things like fast fashion and fashion trends. Particularly our pop women need to have these distinct kind of eras. So a switch up in their image based on an album or even per song they release. And interestingly, this isn't necessary for our pop men who seem more able to create an image or a general vibe without then having to do too much to it with time, at least not in the same kind of time frame, right? This places pop stars or pop girlies' careers on a precipice, with those who are not versatile or flexible being at risk of falling through the cracks. There are so many people out there now, so many singers producing music either to an algorithm to be seen, being, quote, different shades of the same thing. This reminds me quite clearly actually of when Billie Eilish had her like big break and when she really came to the fore. Suddenly, all the music execs were hunting and kind of churning out anyone with a remotely similar style, even shaping people to fulfill that or forcing people to become that in order to then make money. Creativity be damned. This is capitalism. As fans, we are then less interested in the artist, maybe, and more in the single on a larger scale. With things like TikTok music confining people's knowledge of a song to its chorus or even a shorter refrain. It's sad if and when people have put such work into their music for it to then be kind of appreciated for its marketability or snappiness for a dance video or for a really short snippet. And returning to this kind of algorithm question, my Spotify was really, really keen on me hearing Doechie's Anxiety, but then it disappeared very, very quickly from my DJ. And yes, I do listen to the Spotify DJ. I know, after like a month. And I haven't heard any Doechie music since then. So to gain a large fan base as an individual now is very, very hard. And this kind of need to construct your music or your image or the way in which you market yourself, because then the self kind of becomes a product in order to become successful. The way in which you do this has to be so specific and manufactured that does it then lose any sense of personal touch of identity of who you are, and does it curb the creative spirit? And then imagine being a band, right? The music landscape now is oriented around individual artists, when bands and groups used to be much more prevalent. And another trend that I actually missed, I didn't really clock it particularly, but upon reflection, I actually realised this, and it was mainly Khadija Mbowe's live stream that brought this to the fore, is where are all the boys? So even in the last 5 years, right, we've got the likes of Harry Styles, he seems to have fallen quiet, and the biggest singles have all been coming from women. This isn't a new thing though, right? So 10 years ago, there seems to, at least to me, there seems to have been a lot more male solo artists, like Jason Derulo. Anyone? Come on. When he started the song, everyone was Jason Derulo. Come, it's a classic. It's iconic. And yet, I feel that the boys have gone silent. Where have they gone? And I like I say, I only realized this when Khadija Bow actually brought it up, but it's crazy to me how they just seem to have disappeared. And I think, this is a lot to do with the algorithm and what's trending and all that jazz, right? You're seeing a lot of solo female artists because that is currently what is popular and that is what is being pushed. And then say referring back to Harry Styles, right? So, I mean, with recent circumstances and whatever, and also people are allowed to take time out to produce music. And I think this very like short form content kind of economy that we're living in, if somebody doesn't release an album like every year, they're just forgotten. And I think it's important to remember that people put a lot of work into these things, and especially the more famous you are, perhaps the more flexible you can be in how you curate things. And ultimately, for example, with Harry Styles, maybe that's what a lot of the pop boys are doing. And maybe, perhaps, they're given more of a license to actually take this time out compared to the pop girlies, quote unquote, who have to constantly churn stuff out because the landscape is so competitive. And I think the nuance as well to this is that men were never really allowed into this particular form of pop. It's a realm, this kind of very mainstream, it's not quite bubblegum pop, but I think it's what used to be bubblegum pop in like the 2010s, and then it's evolved slightly and got a slightly more alternative, maybe playful edge, I guess playful pop in a way. And I think, male singers aren't as recyclable, right? They're able to stay in the industry under slightly different or shifted guises, which then still allows them to move with the times, but they don't have to kind of switch into these eras like the women do, the females kind of stars do. And there is definitely that age factor as well. I think male stars are more able to age in the mainstream and still kind of stick to their roots and alter a little bit, whereas women have much more of a ticking time bomb on their backs, especially in this kind of bubblegum pop, playful pop realm. And remembering our longevity kind of pop girls, people like Taylor Swift and Ariana Grande have the advantages of already having an identity wrapped up in different styles. So, Taylor started off in country with her music slowly treading back that way already. And then Ariana Grande is an actress. I can see them No, still going in like 20 years, be it country albums or soul and opera or performing on stage at the West End. But if this is not built into your image from the get go, or hasn't even been enabled as part of your image from the start, audiences have these shallow expectations. If one was to circumvent this, would it cause more of an uproar than an extension? Importantly, important to note that pop has evolved with the years. So even in the last 10 years, as I said before, I can see the changes in the kind of overall tone of the music, and not everyone has survived. So certain styles of pop, that kind of Katy Perry, twee, bubblegum kind of style, were once lauded as the best thing since sliced bread. And now they're looked at as more cringeworthy and even forgettable. Perhaps the pendulum will swing back to hot and cold, but if one attempts to ride out the wave of their previous success, they will inevitably have a fatal flop. Pop stars are ticking time bombs, and one day the switch will flip, blink, and you'll miss it. Is it a curse to have a huge hit? So Charlie XCX, for example, did well off the back of the whole Brat Summer phenomenon, but she has spoken herself on how the validation she felt from that is in this sensitive state now, where it could crack and break at any second. And when someone has had such sudden success like that, it's hard, if not impossible, to sustain that very high level, leading to an inevitable fall. While success is what everyone strives for, one wonders if this kind of mass popularity is the worst thing for forming a career. With the quick turnover of what is popular, it does make me wonder, are people really so fickle with the music they like? And will they turn away from what they once loved due to what is in or around or what is pushed onto them? So, as a side tangent, I think these trends are also echoed in the kind of turnover of stars in Hollywood. The most recognizable or bankable faces changes constantly, and it seems to be harder for younger stars to rise to this kind of foretold top. Again, is it this oversaturation question? There are so many new people, it's hard to be the next Brad Pitt or Meryl Streep, right? One moment we have Timothy Chalamet, and then the next minute we're talking about Paul Mescal, and oh god, wow, the microphone really went then. I'm so excited, and now it seems to constantly be turning over on who's going to be the next big hitter. People last at best a month, and then we're on to somebody else. And linking this back into music, it seems that the songs people sing or the roles that they play become this kind of surrogate for what they're like as a person. And while this may be more true for singers, although who knows in this curated image age, it's 99% not the case for actors. It's through this line of thought that people like Timothy Chalamet were archetyped as the soft boy, and this reason still why action stars from, say, the 90s can only get these particular kinds of roles. And as people age, they're pushed into like granddad action stuff like Liam Neeson, right? People know people for their most famous pursuit. So if they try to change, it's more likely to fail. This isn't to say, for example, Liam Neeson doesn't enjoy making these films. It's not to say that people can't just make the same thing because that's what they like, right? It's like maybe, it's like saying somebody who does musicals in West End, it's like they always do musicals. It's like, oh, maybe they should do a serious drama because it allows them to break from that musical kind of image, but maybe they just really want to do musicals. So I think, there is that side of this and that people may enjoy those kinds of things. But I think especially for actors, people can get typecast and shackled into particular roles, especially the more famous you are. So again, this links into the whole kind of Brat Summer thing as well. Perhaps one could say in all this that we're all acting. So, with the high turnover of trends and the like, many jump onto the fashion carousel and can never get off. So, is the internet the place where personal style and, God forbid, is the int- is the internet the place where personal style and, God forbid, individual thought goes to die? So, in the spotlight and online, there is a pressure to be constantly parading as your best self. Even in reality, the adeptness of most people to the media circus means that we frame ourselves as actors on the screen rather than people in reality. Lines begin to blur the more and more media we consume, and while we logically know what is what, the manufacturing of personal image is becoming this kind of deadly cycle. The more we scroll, the more we consume, the more detached we may become from the real world. One's degree of surveillance is influenced by their demographic. And speaking from my own place, those perceived as women are more highly surveilled and therefore more highly policed than those perceived as men. Indeed, an interview that I actually we saw recently with Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo struck this point exactly. So when asked about the pressures of things like body image and beauty standards, Ariana Grande was quite upset. And while, we knew or should have known this anyway, it really shows her up as a person just like anyone else. I can't imagine having your image like ripped apart every day so publicly. It's a nasty reality. And the nature of humans as both community and competitor has fueled the success of social media to the best and the worst extents. So, where does this leave us? This was very much kind of thought, popular culture, throwing through ideas and seeing what sticks kind of one. I think it's really interesting, especially the point that really struck me and why I wanted to make this video is especially the kind of trend between quote unquote like pop women and pop men. And I think it's really interesting to when you really scrutinize music trends, how quick stars are turning over today versus even just 10 years ago. And thinking about like my own kind of musical taste and my own kind of musical past. I mean, I listened to a lot of music that was made like when about 10 years ago. And I think there is that element of kind of nostalgia listening, and maybe that's how certain artists persist in a way. Um, but it's slightly alarming. And I think when you see these quote unquote kind of carbon copies coming out, it's quite sad because you wonder if that's actually what that person likes or whether they're just doing it to get their foot in the door. And I mean, these things have to be done sometimes, in any realm of life, in any realm of work. But it's interesting to see where trends have gone, and this very, very high turnover makes both, well, anything in media, right? So it could be influencers, it could be singers, it could be musicians, it could be, well, singers and musicians, but it could be actors, anything in that kind of realm. You're a product. And with the very high turnover that we have today, it's a very, very, I mean, it always was kind of an unstable pursuit unless you got really big. But even more so now, it feels like an incredibly difficult industry to break into, but then pursue as a lifelong career. And maybe that isn't possible anymore. Maybe it's, as in many cases where people try and get some stability, you're entering into multiple careers, you have multiple avenues. Everyone has to do several things to be successful. And that is the society we live in. So it's a great thing to think about when I'm coming to the end of my university degree. It would be great if this podcast just blew up, like share, like, please. But no, thank you guys so much for listening. I'm gonna sign off there and do something. I have no idea what I'm talking about. But yes, thank you all so much for listening. I will be back soon with another podcast that I've already scripted. I'm really flowing right now with these scripts. And the next one's going to be a fun one on kind of instant messaging versus face-to-face communication. Because I think that's something that, again, I've been inspired recently, just kind of played on my mind, especially in this time when I'm going to be leaving and people disappear from one's life at big times of change, etc., etc. Don't you forget about me playing in the distance. Um, yeah, so on that despondent note, because you know that I can't be easy breezy and happy all the time, I hope you have a wonderful week, or however long it may be between this and the next episode. And take care. Let's keep talking.